Today we are bringing you 6 names that we are buying low in the Dynasty offseason.
Come on,
6
baby.
guys that we believe should be added to your Dynasty roster right now via trade. Do us a favor, go ahead and smash that like button. But without further ado, I will start us off.
Yep.
The number one player, at least for me, that I've been trying to buy right now is Rashee Rice, rookie wide receiver out of SMU.
Love it.
You know, I personally don't think people have realized how good of a season Rashee Rice had, but we will talk about that in a second. In 2023, he had 79 receptions, 938 yards, and 7 receiving touchdowns. All while, by the way, sitting out the last week of the season. They decided not to play him in that last game. They sat Mahomes. They sat a lot of their starters. They had nothing to play for, but Rashee could have broken even more records for this franchise. He finished as a wide receiver 27 in PPR, and on a per game basis, he was a wide receiver 28, averaging over 13 points per game. What Rashee did is uncommon. Specifically, it's uncommon with the Chiefs organization, and it's uncommon under Andy Reid. Rookie wide receivers, typically, they do not pick up the offense straight away and get, put into this situation where they're relied upon week in and week out. The Andy Reid system is so complicated. You are drowning in information each week of the rookie season. So what Rashee Rice did is incredible. Look at Andy Reid's track record. Is Andy Reid, in his career, have they not picked good rookie wide receivers? You can make an argument there. But no rookie wide receiver under Andy Reid has been more impressive in his career than Rashee Rice. He's had a better rookie season than Deshaun Jackson did, than Jeremy Maclin did back in the day on the Eagles. In 1963, come back with me. Let's tell a story, okay?
My goodness.
In 1963, Lamar Hunt moved the Dallas Texans from the AFL to the NFL, and he also brought them to the beautiful city of Kansas City. I'm realizing I'm wearing my Chiefs hat today, so this is going to sound so biased.
Oh, no.
That was 60 years ago. So there has been 60 years in the Kansas City Chiefs franchise. Since that time, in franchise history, here is where Rashee Rice ranks amongst rookie Chief wide receivers. In targets, he is third all time with 102. In receptions, he has the record. No Chiefs rookie wide receiver has more receptions than Rashee Rice as in the rookie season, 79. Receiving yards, he is second with 938. Again, he could have broken all these records. He just didn't play in the last game. Receiving yards per game, he is second. Receiving touchdowns, again, second with 7. Most of those categories, by the way, he is in second to Dwayne Bowe, not even Tyreek Hill. Not to say he's going to be better than Tyreek, right? That's ridiculous. But he was the guy for the Chiefs from week 9 onwards. Right after their week 9 bye week, week 10 onwards, he was the guy for this team. And that's not uncommon for a rookie wide receiver. You're going to see a trend in today's video. For me, I try and identify young rookies who dominated in the second half, and we're going to talk about a couple. But Rice just took over after the bye week. Look at his averages from weeks 1 to 9 and then weeks 11 to 7. So I gave you 2 parts of the year for him. From weeks 1 to 9, snap percentage hovering around 46, jumps all the way up to 75. There was actually towards the end of the year, he's playing 85-90% of the snaps. His targets go up from 4.5 to almost 9. His receptions per game from 3.5 to almost 7. His receiving yards per game almost double. His fantasy points per game from weeks 11 to 17, he was averaging 17 points per game. And he finished in those time stretches as a wide receiver 39 and the wide receiver 9 from weeks 11 onwards. 11 to 17, he was the wide receiver 9. Now, Rashee Rice, on a per-game basis, scored more points per game from week 11 onwards than Mike Evans, Michael Pittman, Brandon Ayuk, Devonta Smith, DK Metcalf, Chris Olave, Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase, A.J. Brown, Garrett Wilson, Stephon Diggs. Now, of course, I'm not an idiot. I'm not sitting here saying he's a better player than Chris Olave, Jamar Chase, A.J. Brown. That's not what I'm saying. I'm trying to show you how impressive his rookie season was. And we have to recognize, even as someone who supports the Chiefs, this team can no longer be Travis Kelce centric. They have got to change the offense. We saw him hit that inevitable cliff right before our eyes in 2023. He just was not the same player. Defenses, yes, defenses were every week it was like, stop Travis Kelce. But typically Kelce had an answer for that last year. He has lost a step, unfortunately. Has anything to do with his love life? I don't know. Probably not.
Yes.
But
yes.
he just doesn't look like the same player, and he's been talking about retirement. Travis Kelce this year, since his breakout year in 2016, his targets were the second lowest in that time span. He had the fourth lowest amount of receptions in that time span. He had the lowest amount of receiving yards since 2016, the lowest amount of receiving yards per game, and the second lowest receiving touchdowns in that span. Point being is, for a long time, people were worried about Chiefs wide receivers because Travis Kelce was the guy. I just don't think he has the juice in him to be that guy anymore for this team. And Rashee Rice is stepping up on a team that's going to have a late first-round pick. So they're not going to get someone who's worlds better than him. They're not going to add a Marvin Harrison. They're not going to add a Malik Neighbors. They might add a compliment. Of course, they need that. But this is a crucial part of this team moving forward, connected to a great quarterback. So I'm willing to go buy some Rashee Rice. At the moment, you're looking around a late first-round pick, somewhere around the 109 onwards. Now, of course, every league is different. Let's just say this from the beginning. We're going to give you ideas. We can't tell you exactly what will happen in your league.
Correct.
We're going to give you ideas. Maybe start to look at offers around George Pickens. Maybe move off of Deebo Samuel, James Cook, Rachaad White. Those are some names I'm willing to move on from to grab Rashee Rice. And also, I just wanted to offer another idea. Let's say you have some of these names. I'm looking to tear down from some of these names, not because I don't like them, just because I'm not personally sure that when we're actually talking about fantasy points and not just as a prospect, that Rice won't be as good as these players at some point, right? And he was better than some of these players this year. Chris Olave, tear down from him.
Right.
Brandon Ayuk, Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith. Again, I'm not decrediting these players. I'm saying, can we tear down and gain some value back? Can I get a first-round pick in Rashee Rice and send you Chris Olave in a late second or mid-second, right? Those are the kind of deals we're trying to pursue there. So my first buy is Rashee Rice.
Richie Rich, love the take. Let's see what happens going into the 2024 season. Maybe your team drafts another wide receiver.
I think we could. Yeah. We need it, though. That's
Which is
the thing.
not bad. With they can definitely get a complimentary wide receiver to flank Rashee Rice, which is really good. So love the take, love the take. All right, going into my first buy low player. I'm going to start off at the running back position here. Somebody that I'm actually really excited for, and that is Kendre Miller. Very limited opportunity coming into his rookie year. Near to none opportunity to take over this backfield in 2023. And a lot of people love the idea of him having some opportunity early in the season, but that just wasn't the case. 41 rushing attempts, a touchdown, 10 out of 11, finished RB 71, and a points per game basis, he was RB 48. He only played 8 out of 17 games, mind you, in 2023. He only played 14% of the snaps as well. That was near to none. He was invisible on the field. We barely saw him, but he is definitely worth buying if you are looking at the running back market, if you are in need of a running back going into 2024, and the clear pathway to opportunities. In the first point essentially here is Alvin Kamara, right? I mean, I think that is the biggest caveat here when you think of Alvin Kamara, who, in my opinion, is still an elite-ish running back in fantasy. We've seen that this year. Obviously, that trend is probably going to start declining as he gets older and older. But I believe the Saints have to start moving on from someone. And some of all these key players on the Saints team, they are in one of the worst cap situations going into 2024. They have been in the past 2 to 3 years. It's been crazy. I mean, right now, if you go to over the cap, they're in negative of $72 million. They have to clear some cap if they want to start building this team for the future. And that's exactly what potentially could be happening here. And the best way to do that with Alvin Kamara is actually trading him away and not releasing him, because that does take a $17.2 million cap hit. And remember, last year, coming into the offseason in 2023, Alvin Kamara was a top running back that was on the trade box saying, hey, Alvin Kamara could be getting moves. Remember, we were talking about the Bills. We were talking about if Jonathan Taylor wasn't going to the Colts, would they get someone like all these contending teams? Can the New Orleans Saints trade away Alvin Kamara before the 2024 season to a contending team and free up some cap space, and then which can easily lead to some clear opportunity for someone like a Kendre Miller going into the 2024 season? Now, the second is draft capital. You have to remember the draft capital that Kendre Miller did receive in his rookie, or he got drafted, right? He was taken with decent draft capital. He was a 71st pick in the 3rd round last year. He was a 4th running back off the board behind obviously Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Zach Charbonnet. Zach Charbonnet went into a worse situation. I think Kendrick Miller can easily jump him in this class, specifically in opportunity, without a doubt. So do you think of the draft capital? You think of the 2024 draft class and how weak this class is? If you envision Alvin Kamara no longer being on this team, I don't see the Saints investing in another running back, in my personal opinion. Right. So I'm not necessarily worried of Kendrick Miller's opportunity getting taken away. And let me remind you what Kendrick Miller actually did in TCU. Oddly enough, coming into that season, coming out of college, I wasn't a massive fan of Kendrick Miller. There are still a lot of question marks that I wanted to be answered, which I was hoping maybe we can see a little bit of a glimpse in 2023, but we did not see that, right? Obviously with the limited opportunities, and there are still question marks, but there are good traits that I still like about Kendrick Miller that did showcase this year. And that was obviously the ability to handle, or in TCU, the ability to handle a workload and the physicality that he brings onto the field. And we saw that at TCU, 224 attempts in 2023, just under 1,400 yards, 17 touchdowns, 12th in yards after the catch, yards after contact in that year amongst running backs, 11th in missed tackles forced, which is also pretty incredible. He's a big physical running back that can extend the play. And we saw that a little bit if you did watch week 18, which I know a lot of your fantasy guys don't watch unless you're a Saints fan or a Falcons fan. 13 attempts, 73 yards, 5.6 yards per carry and a touchdown. Had 14, just nearly 15 fantasy points in that game. He finished RB 13. If he were to handle a workload like that, 13 to 20 attempts a game, how high could Kendrick Miller go going into the 2024 season? Honestly, and lastly, I know a lot of people say, okay, well, there's another caveat here, Jamal Williams. Respectfully, I am not worried about Jamal Williams. I think if Alvin Kamara is off this team, Kendrick Miller can easily take over this backfield. Maybe it's an 80-20, maybe even it's a 70-30. Kendrick Miller, in my opinion, with Alvin Kamara off this team, with the potentially new head coach or offensive coordinator, if Dennis Allen does move on, can take over this backfield in 2024. So if you are willing to pay and try to acquire Kendrick Miller at the moment, according to the market, a mid to late second here. And once again, the running back class in 2024 is not the best. So maybe it might be worth trying to acquire Kendrick Miller at the moment, especially what about a Roscoe Johnson for players, a Khalil Herbert, a Tyler Lockett, a James Conner, a Cortland Sutton, and Austin Eckler, who hit a massive decline. All these guys are in question mark going into 2024 in terms of their production. So someone like Kendrick Miller that can easily step into an opportunity in 2024, I would 100% try and buy right now.
Yeah, I love it. You guys know, if you've been with us last year, I'm a huge Kendrick Miller guy. Was really excited about that pick. I thought that they would have moved on from Alvin last year. Mm-hmm. And Alvin wasn't really efficient at all. He's just getting so many targets. That's really what carried him in fantasy. And yeah, by the way, you said that last week 18 game. That's what I was thinking we could see from Kendrick. He had, like you mentioned, 73 yards, a touchdown, averaged 5.6 yards per carry. Well, Jamal Williams had 14 carries, so one more, and he averaged 1.9 yards per carry against the same defense with the same offensive line. So Kendrick Miller would clearly be the guy to step up there. I love that pick, and I got a lot of Kendrick on my dynasty team, so I'm ready. All right, my next pick, again, I told you guys, I love identifying rookies who dominated in the second half and who I think are not properly valued yet. People haven't maybe realized exactly what they did. Talked about Rashee Rice. Now let's talk about Jayden Reed. I want to go buy more Jayden Reed. You and I bought a lot of Jayden Reed in our rookie drafts because of the price. We didn't
100%.
Let's be honest, we weren't in love with this prospect, but we loved the price. You could get him late second, early third. It felt like a steal. In 2023, he had 64 receptions, just under 800 yards and 10 total touchdowns. He finished as a wide receiver 25. On a per game basis, he was a wide receiver 26, averaging over 13.5 points per game. And like Rashee Rice, he balled out in the second season, which again, I believe that those trends move over until in the player's sophomore year.
Right.
But if you look at his first 8 games versus his last 8 games of the regular season, like we did with Rashee, let's check this out. From weeks 1 to 9 versus weeks 10 to 18, his targets go up about 2, from 5 to almost 7. Receptions from about 3 to 5. Receiving yards per game go up. His fantasy points per game go up from just under 10 to 17.5. And in those time spans, from weeks 1 to 9, he was a wide receiver 49. From weeks 10 to 18, the wide receiver 10. By the way, from weeks 10 to 18, when Reed was a featured weapon in that offense, the Packers were 6-3. They were firing on all cylinders. And a lot of that time, Christian Watson was not really healthy. It was Jayden Reed. It wasn't Romeo Doubs and Jayden Reed. Jayden Reed was the offensive weapon for this team. And the good news is he is attached to a top 10 quarterback in Jordan Love. I don't think anyone at this point could disagree. Y'all know we love Jordan Love on this channel. That was when we do those must stash videos.
Yeah.
He was my mustache for 2 years in a row. And obviously that's paying off on some dynasty teams. But let me just speak quickly, Badaki, to the NFC North fans.
Oh boy.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. They did it again. The Packers do not miss on quarterbacks. They don't miss. Love was really up and down to begin the year. But after his team's bye week, things really clicked. And I know I'm showing you guys a lot of different splits. This is, in my opinion, the most impressive split you will see. Look at what Jordan Love did from weeks 1 to 5. And then after the bye week, they had a bye week in week 6, from weeks 7 to 8. From weeks 1 to 5, he was a good fantasy quarterback, but he was not a good real NFL quarterback. He was making some really bad mistakes. He completed about 55.5% of his passes. That goes up to 67.5% from weeks 7 to 18. Ridiculous turnaround in his accuracy. His passing yards went up. His passing touchdowns went up. The most important thing here, from weeks 1 to 5, he was averaging over 1 interception a game. In fact, Jordan Love threw half of his interceptions on the year in the first 5 weeks of the NFL season. And then from weeks 7 to 18, he was averaging 0.4 interceptions per game. That number goes way down, and his yards per attempt as well went up in that time span. I told you earlier, Jordan Love threw more than half of his interceptions in the first 5 weeks of the season. He threw just 1 interception in the last 8 games. In the last 8 games.
Oh boy.
When you start to look at some of those stats, Aaron Rodgers' first year, Jordan Love, his first year, they could have found gold again. By the way, all while leading his team to the playoffs after a 2-5 start. A 2-5 start? Can you imagine the pressure on Jordan Love? Everyone in media is talking about, well, they're going to have a high draft pick. Maybe they can take Drake May. Maybe they can take Jaden Daniels, right? Everyone's talking about replacing him at 2-5, and he led the team to the playoffs. Point being in all of this, guys, is Jayden Reed is a damn good player, and they got a damn good quarterback throwing him the ball. And now this duo gets to grow for years to come. And we know they're not going to draft a first-round wide receiver. This team does not do that. So, look, the most important part of evaluating a player's upside is what they've done in their rookie year for wide receivers. And it doesn't need to be complicated. You buy good players in good situations.
Right.
That is Jayden Reed. And I don't think he's valued properly. Right now, he's valued around the 111 to the 206 range, depending on your league. Obviously, everywhere is going to be different. Some might cost more. Some might not realize who he is, and he might be just as affordable as that. Every league's different. But again, I'd be looking to kind of pivot off of George Pickens to Jayden Reed if I could. I know it's going to sound crazy, but Stephon Diggs. You know, if you look at Stephon Diggs end of the year, that is a concerning trend. I'm not saying he's a bad player, but I would be willing to pivot off a big name to get a name I really like in Jayden Reed. Right. Josh Jacobs, we don't really want to buy too many running backs right now at this point. Will Levis, I'd be willing to move off of Cooper Kupp and Devontae Adams, some of those vets. So go get you some Jayden Reed as soon as you can.
Yeah, look, Jayden Reed is somebody that I bought, I think, 2-3 weeks ago in one of my videos saying that, like, you should be stashing him. Don't move him. Don't do anything. And, yes, go out and buy him now before his ceiling starts to skyrocket, because he is somebody that at the moment, like Zach is saying, it is tied to a really competent and top 10 quarterback, exactly what you want on your dynasty team. So I love Jayden Reed coming into this as a buy low here. All right, my second player. And hear me out, because I think a lot of people are sleeping on this player. And when you hear this name, you're going to be like, this guy's not a buy low. But I have a couple of information that can kind of bring in support this argument. That is Tank Dell. Tank
Okay.
Dell is my buy low wide receiver currently at the moment. And I think when you look back at it, you can see his injury. Like, obviously, he was skyrocketing throughout the season, and you saw his injury, which has really taken a hit of his value at the moment. So keep that in mind, right? Finished wide receiver 39 this year, caught 7 targets, just over 700 yards. Wide receiver 18 on a points per game basis. Only played 11 out of 17 games, so keep that in mind, right? Before we get to his value, though, obviously why you should be buying him, and clearly the number one point here is quarterback play. CJ Stroud has exceeded all expectations coming into the 2023 season. You know, he's exceeded my expectations. Everyone's like, literally everyone. Like, he has played phenomenal. He has finished as a QB 11 in his rookie year so far. He missed 2 games. When you look back at it, what he was on pace for to finish as a QB 5 if he didn't miss those 2 games in his rookie year, which is phenomenal. He's a front runner to a rookie of the year. He led his team to the playoffs. I mean, the man is elite. The list could essentially could go on for a very long time, but he has solidified himself as being an elite quarterback in the NFL already in his rookie year, which is exciting here. Second is Tank Dell's production and the chemistry that he has with CJ Stroud. No one was expecting someone like, once again, CJ Stroud to be excelling the way he has, and Tank Dell being one of his favorite targets coming into this year as well. No one has expected that, and how he has stepped up to the front play. You have to remember, in the NFL draft, the Texans draft CJ Stroud. They go up to CJ. They say, "Hey, we have a pick here. Who should we take?" He says Tank Dell. And they go pick Tank Dell. This is exactly why this is so important to me, especially when you look forward. I don't care if he's 24, 25. He's 24 years old right now. The 4 years that he's going to be with CJ Stroud is something that I want on my fantasy team, right? But going back to the production, I really wanted to bring the numbers weeks 1 to 5 and then weeks 8 to 12. Obviously, he has missed the games in between with a calf injury. He had a concussion in a couple games. Have a look at how much uptick he has gotten in the second half of the season when they 100% released Tank Dell and CJ Stroud to just say, you know what, do your thing, boys. Snap percentages, 60 to 83 on going into the second half of the season, 5.6 targets versus 9.4 targets. That's a massive uptick, nearly 4 targets per game. Same thing with receptions, 3.6 versus 5.4. That gets uptick. The yardage obviously goes up. Now, this is what is interesting. The fantasy points per game clearly goes up from 11 fantasy points per game to 17.3, which is phenomenal. And I think that could have been even higher if we would have seen him on pace. But the fantasy finished wide receiver 25 in that span versus wide receiver 3. But what excites me is that what he's on pace for. Obviously, on pace is not a perfect math. It's probably taking things a little bit out of context, but I thought he was on pace to be wide receiver 5 in the second half of the season. If you're telling me if Tank Dell did not get injured and he currently would have finished, maybe top 5 is too absurd, top 10, top 12, the conversation right now is that Tank Dell is probably a top 6 pick in the NFL in your rookie drafts right now. But that is not the case. So when I see these numbers, I get excited because those are the 2 things I look for. Elite quarterback play with limitless production going into, future years with both CJ Stroud and Tank Dell. So what am I willing to pay for? And this is what the interesting thing that I looked into when I was doing my research. I was saying, okay, what does the community think of Tank Dell right now? Because I know what I envision him as and where I have him in my rankings, which you go check on flockfantasy.com. Of course, when researching, these are where they have, and obviously things will change, but this is where the fantasy community, I went to a couple main pages, and this is where they have Tank Dell ranked. Our Flock Fantasy on our website, wide receiver 20. Fantasy Pros, wide receiver 26. Keep Trade Cut, wide receiver 14. It's a little bit higher. A DLF, wide receiver 23. ESPN, wide receiver 25. That is an average of a wide receiver 15, right? So if you're telling me, maybe your friends is looking at all these averages, they want to look at all these other experts, maybe their favorite expert, maybe it's me, maybe it's the Flock Fantasy page, right? And you're seeing him as a wide receiver 20. I think that is a buy low right now because once again, if he did not get injured, he would easily be a top 12 wide receiver in a lot of fantasy people's rankings which I believe is really exciting here. So when you look at the value at the moment, picks 107 to 110 is kind of where he's averaging. Now you're saying, man, am I going to pay a first round for Tank Dell? Maybe you can, maybe you would, because of who he is connected with coming into this year. Obviously, once again, I talk about CJ Stroud. Players like Michael Pittman, I'm willing to move off of, which sounds crazy, right? Some of these names may sound crazy, but if you're telling me these guys are not paired with an elite quarterback like a CJ Stroud, I'm willing to listen. Now, Michael Pittman, I know he has Anthony Richardson, and we've seen him excel with Gardner Minshew, but does that really take a hit with Anthony Richardson when he comes back? What about a T. Higgins? What if he doesn't go to a team that we like? What if he goes to the Giants with Daniel Jones? Do you really want to invest in T. Higgins then? I don't know. DK Metcalf. Obviously, we've seen a little bit of up and down season with DK Metcalf this year. Deebo Samuel, he is injured. He's an older wide receiver. I know he's tied to a good offense, but maybe you can get a little bit more back. What about a Drake London? What if they don't invest in a quarterback or don't trade for a quarterback whatsoever? I know Arthur Smith is gone. I think I would rather have Tank Dell over some of these guys. Once again, I think as we get closer and closer to the season, especially in redraft, I will not be surprised someone like a Tank Dell goes in mid-second, late third of your redraft leagues. And in Dynasty, it can be, I would say, really close to a top 12. Right now, he is a top 12 wide receiver for me in my Dynasty rankings. Yeah. So Tank Dell for me is a buy low right now at this moment. And I do believe this is a good window to buy him before he starts to rise.
Yeah, you mentioned averaging wide receiver 15 from all 5 of those sites. It's actually wide receiver 22 when you average it out. 21.
There you go. A little bit mistake. So yeah, 22 then.
Depending on where you play or people's perception, he could be someone that you could look at buying for sure.
Yeah.
All right, for my last take, this time last year, there was a low-key running back that I told you guys to buy on our channel. His name was Jerome Ford.
Oh boy.
I am trying to find you this year's version of Jerome Ford, and I believe that could be downtown Chase Brown.
Talk it up, baby.
Did not have much involvement this year until the end of the season, but keep in mind, Joe Mixon's status has been shaky for quite some time. Before the 2023 season, Joe Mixon restructured his contract to stay with the team. He took a $4.39 million pay cut in 23. And in 2024, he's set to take a $4.67 million pay cut. So maybe they keep him, but you have to keep in mind this team has to make a decision on T. Higgins. If they need to clear up even a little bit of cap room to keep T. Higgins, Joe Mixon could be considered a cut candidate. Regardless, we love taking shots on running backs that had late round draft capital, but we like their profile. Like I mentioned, last year I told you to go buy Jerome Ford. An injury happens, he gets to step up and you know, you get value there.
Yeah.
We liked, specifically you really liked Chase Brown out of Illinois, his profile out of Illinois.
Yeah.
But he got 5th round draft capital. We had to lower expectations for his rookie year. But Chase Brown, the prospect, he was able to handle a huge amount of work at Illinois in 2022.
Yeah.
He had 75.5% of Illinois' rushing yards in 2022. In that same year, he was 7th in yards after contact with 935 yards. He forced 82 missed tackles, which was 4th best in college football that year.
Sheesh.
And in 2022, he had the 2nd most rushing attempts out of 600 running backs who played football that year in college football. Point being, he can handle a workload if he's given it. My pro comps in our rookie report was Zach Moss and Devin Singletary. Funnily enough, those are 2 guys that might not excite you a lot, but those are 2 guys who ended up being pretty damn fantasy relevant in 2023. Guys that would have helped people win games who stepped into opportunity. Chase was electric with his limited opportunities in 2023. The opportunities that he did get, he was 4th in explosive run rate at 9.1%. That's a percentage of his runs that went for more than 15 yards. He had the 4th best breakaway percentage. He had 0.25 missed tackles forced per attempt, over 3 yards after contact per attempt. He had the 12th best elusive rating according to PFF. All that is a minimum of 30 attempts. At the end of the day, we have an affordable running back who handled a large workload in college, attached to a good offense that could step up in 2024. It's that simple. So, look, we're not sending a 2nd round pick for him, but if you can send a 3rd round pick and a clogger on your team, someone who's just clogging up a spot, try that. I'd be willing to move off of Zach Moss, Marvin Mims, J.K. Dobbins, Gabe Davis, A.J. Dillon, Antonio Gibson, Elijah Moore, and Dalton Schultz. All names I'd be willing to kind of pivot off of to go take a shot on a guy like Chase Brown before any offseason news happens. By the way, guys, just want to quickly let you know before we get to this last take here that we have officially released version 1.0 of our 2024 rookie report. If you are a die-hard Dynasty guy and you want to learn even more about this class, go check that out. Here's an example of Marvin Harrison Jr.'s profile. We have profiles for quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. So make sure you go check that out. Go to flockfantasy.com/land. As long as you're using the promo code LAND and you're on the Mother Flocker tier, you're going to have access to that profile, as well as a Dynasty team review where we look at your team, fantasy hotline, the Dynasty trade calculator. Everything is unlocked for you guys. So go check that out. But Badaki, who is the last player on today's video?
Yeah, I'm a little bit nervous. I'm already kind of starting off 2024 with the shaky one. I still love this player. And I think there can be a whole new opportunity for him, and that is Jahan Dotson. He has hurt. Honestly, he has hurt. I'm pretty sure every single fantasy owner this year. And was it really his fault? It wasn't, right? Obviously, this year only 49 receptions, 83 targets, just over 500 yards, 4 touchdowns. When finished wide receiver 56. It was terrible. Points per game, wide receiver 67. That was a 7.3 average fantasy points per game. It was terrible for Jahan Dotson. But look, there's opportunity and a new head coach is coming in. That's what's exciting me right now. Ron Rivera is out. Thank you, Ron. Thank you for your service. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
But Ron Rivera is out. You know, you guys invest in your ownership finally coming in and with a new ownership. There's a new GM. You're getting people from the Golden State Warriors coming in to build this franchise from the top to the from the bottom to the top, and that's exactly what's exciting here. You can think of all the new head coaches that is going to be coming into this opportunity for the Washington Commanders, soon to be the Washington football team again. Shout out to them. Mike McDonald, right? Ben Johnson, Bobby Slowick, Raheem Morris, Mike Vrabel. All these guys could be seen. Jim Harbaugh, right? That's probably your favorite one. Imagine Jim Harbaugh going to the Washington Commanders. I would hate that as a Giants fan. But these guys bring in new culture, which is exciting when you think about it. And then you go to the second part of the take, essentially, is a new franchise quarterback. I woke up this morning, the Bears are keeping Matt Eberflus. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that indicates that they're going to keep Justin Fields, but there is an opportunity where you guys could really get your franchise quarterback here in either Caleb Williams, and obviously you were always going to get a quarterback in Drake May. That's just really exciting. Or Jaden Daniels, however way you want to go. What's good about this is that you guys are finally going to get your franchise quarterback, and Jahan Dotson is finally going to be playing with a competent quarterback coming into the 2024 season. Once again, could they trade up for Caleb Williams? Could they pick Drake May or Jaden Daniels? I am not sure. It's a win-win situation for the Washington Commanders and Jahan Dotson. And honestly, lastly, is hope. Mm-hmm. We hope that this organization is going to take it to the next level. We hope that whoever they hire as a head coach, as a quarterback coach, as a whatever the offensive coordinator, whatever that looks like, that is going to excel someone like a Jahan Dotson. And I know you're probably asking about the biggest cock block in fantasy football in Curtis Samuel. Yes, he's still there, but he could also be a cap casualty when you think about what this Washington Commanders team needs. Yes, you get your offensive.
Well, he's a free agent.
Is he a free agent?
Was a free agent.
I thought when I looked it up, I saw 2 more years. Maybe I did read it wrong.
No,
but
he should be a free agent this year.
Okay, so double check that for me. But
I will.
If he is a free agent, then it's over. When I checked it, he had like another year, 2 years.
Actually, I'm doing a free agent video, which will release soon. He is a free agent, I promise you.
Say less. So he's a free agent. And that's exactly what's exciting about this is that Curtis Samuel, the cock block, is a free agent. Is probably no longer going to be on this team because this team has to invest in another quarterback and some more offensive line pieces, you get rid of your defensive players and Montez Sweat and Chase Young. Like, this team needs so much more than another wide receiver. And you have your key players in Terry McLaurin, the long deal contract, and Jahan Dotson, who was taken in the first round just a couple years ago. So if you do want Jahan Dotson, who is a good value price, was a first round pick last year, 111, 110, 112 last year. Now he is valued at the 208 or later, which is crazy. You can get a first round wide receiver here who is going to be getting an elite quarterback. I don't care who you're talking about, Caleb Williams, Drake May, or Jaden Daniels, is going to take a massive rise here. Players that I'm willing to trade away at the moment based off his value, Romeo Doubs. Obviously, yeah, with Jordan Love, maybe people like him a little bit more. Cortland Sutton, you can trade him away. Keaton Mitchell, who people really like and like his explosiveness, I would rather go with the wide receiver. Calvin Ridley, does he stay with Trevor Lawrence or does he move on? I'm not sure. And then Joe Money Bags mixing here. So Jahan Dotson, please don't hurt me again.
Yeah, definitely reason for hope. Let's see what happens with a whole new franchise, everything changing. But do us a favor, guys. Go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe if you like Dynasty Football. And let us know what you think in the comments below. But that is it for today. We'll see you in the next video. All up. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy. Even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.